When we started Sheena's Place, we couldn't have imagined what it would have become, and it's become everything we envision and so much more. And it's exciting to see the contribution and the impact that it's made. And unfortunately, there's still so much more that needs to be done. I've always felt that the best day for Sheena's Place is going to be the day that we close the doors, because there will be no more need for Sheena's Place. But in the meantime, thanks to everybody who continues to make the home what it is. It really does take a village, and we've still got a lot of work to do.
I think the biggest impact of Sheena's Place is it existing and it continuing to persist despite the challenges that we've all faced over the last 18 months and probably Sheena's Place has faced over the last 25 years of its existence.
We've always just thought that there should be a Sheena's Place in every town across the country. I mean, it's just like, this place is gold. I'm just so grateful that it does exist for people that can benefit from the groups.
When I get to do some work looking across the country, I really wish that there was a Sheena's Place in all communities. One where there's an organization that has a really specific goal and mission and vision for what it wants to do and fills a really important need of providing as low of a barrier of support as it can towards people accessing it.
Sheena's offered me physical support, creative support, mental support, and I could do it in a legitimate place that was specific for eating disorders. So that was helpful, that it was specific.
I know that Sheena's Place won't be the support for everyone, but I think it can be a support for someone over the course of their journey, and importantly build community in a way that they might not be able to receive in an individual kind of setting or in a societal setting. Like Sheena's Place, sometimes our groups are almost like a microcosm of society where we get to cheerlead someone as they navigate through a battle that they now want to bring into their life.
I wish I could tell my younger self that, you're not alone in your experience, because there are so many people who feel the same way. And what Sheena's Place did for me, actually, it really validated my experience, because when you're isolated in your own head, you have the disorder, and then you start beating yourself up for having, oh my God, like I'm not normal. Why do I think like this? I must be the only person in the world who feels like this. And when I came to the class, people would be talking, and then I would look and I would be like, I'd be nodding like this, like they're reading my mind. Like I know exactly how that feels. I can totally feel what you're feeling, and it is normal to have doubts, and it is normal to have these thoughts. So many people share that experience.
But my heart aches for the people who need support, who are not even too far outside of Toronto, never mind outside of Ontario, in the far corners of our country. And they suffer in silence, in isolation, because you feel alone in the madness and the isolation and the self-harm and the self-hate.
So if there could be a Sheena's Place, or even an organization like Sheena's Place, that maybe we can support getting there, that is available to each and every Canadian across from our east to west coast, that would be something that would benefit every community in our country. So while we've made some nice strides this past year, increasing accessibility across this province, I think that there are still many communities that aren't aware that we exist and are limited in accessing our services for a variety of reasons. It would be wonderful if we can continue to grow and build so that accessibility is there, and then maybe even beyond our provincial borders. I think that would be a nice ideal to aspire to.
I want to see us become more accessible. I want to see more groups pop up, and I'd like us to be able to work with more folks across Canada. Because we've seen folks try and access our programming who don't live in Ontario, and it sucks to have to turn them away. I'd like to see way more demographic specific programming, because I think it's just a start. And when you start I think when an organization starts providing like demographic specific groups, I think they have a responsibility to like keep up with that and like actually meet the needs of those populations, but also see who's being left out of those groups.
Another thing that we can do is expand our programming to reach beyond the city of Toronto, beyond the province of Ontario. I'd love to see Sheena's type programming as a national program.
One thing I've hoped to see Sheena's Place do at some point is to offer 24/7, 365 support on a national basis. And I know that's a big beast, costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, resources to train people and to keep that service supported. But the work that's been done in Toronto by Sheena's Place is fantastic, phenomenal.
I think that the push to increase the accessibility of our services and our supports to a broader number of people is such an important initiative. Offering demographic-specific groups is one of the ways to reducing barriers to access that folks who have been underserved are facing, and a better way of increasing accessibility. So going online by virtue of not requiring somebody to physically come into our space is one of the initiatives that we were forced to take. But moving forward, continuing to offer online services when things return to sort of more normal circumstances, and having a hybrid approach to programming where we have some services in the house and some services available to people that are farther away or can't access the physical space for different reasons is an ongoing piece of work that we'll attend to.
I think Sheena's Place is a pillar in the community, and I'd like for us to become a place where we're able to diversify both the facilitators and the kind of support that we can provide through mentoring the next generation of people and group members to go out into the world. I think Sheena's Place has a really wonderful foundation that allows us to potentially be a place where new therapists, new facilitators, new trainees can come in and learn about eating disorders in a safe environment, to use their experience here to now go and deliver eating disorder sensitive support to a community that really needs it. There's such a lack of eating disorder informed services out there. It's more so the philosophy and the values of Sheena's Place that I think our clients really, really relate to. And I'd hope for us to become a pillar of mentorship for the next 25 years.
So there are a number of underserved communities right now, and I have no idea how we would access them, but the bodybuilding community is full of people abusing various steroid substances and or so-called healthy eating behaviors and over-exercise. And I think that there's a lot of evidence about the detrimental effects of this particular way of being in the world has on these individuals and their family members in the workplace. So that would be an area I think we should really look into. Also of concern for me that I hear a lot of is a lot more evidence of what we could call orthorexia, which is people who are doing so-called clean eating, where their entire lives almost become completely consumed by getting foods that are the best and this and that. And really, the body is not that discriminating. The body simply just needs fuel and micronutrients. And clean eating leads to restrictive choices, which leads to narrowing of food options, which leads often to nutritional deficits.
I know that probably having more middle-aged, elderly support groups, even senior support, right? Because I think some of the feedback I've heard is from older folks that access our programming. They feel like very old in comparison to a lot of the younger folks who feel very comfortable accessing this space and need this space, but there are a lot of populations who also need this space and it's not quite meeting their needs, or it's there are folks who still aren't accessing the sport because they don't see themselves in it, or something's lacking.
There's an increasing amount of research on food insecurity and the intersection of that with eating disorders, so I would love to see if we could work towards supporting folks who are experiencing food insecurity and an eating disorder in some way, whether that's, I don't know, partnering with a food bank or developing a program of our own, because that's a really important intersection that I think often isn't addressed when we're serving people or supporting people who have eating disorders or experiences of disordered eating. Like if you go to a treatment program and meals are provided and then you step out the door and you're not able to keep up your meal plan because you can't afford food, then that's a massive challenge in terms of accessing recovery and being able to maintain the goals that you're working towards. So it can be a huge barrier for folks to work towards their recovery goals if they don't have access to nutritional food.
I think people can really explore and identify their own biases when it comes to food, weight, and shape, and the way in which that may be impacting how they're interacting with people in their life. That might mean like minding your own body, like mind your own business, like mind your own body. Like if you have a critical comment, it might just be good to keep that to yourself, or it might be a you thing to keep to yourself, because sometimes how we're interacting with the world is a reflection of ourselves.
And I think there are other ways that folks can engage in recovery that doesn't necessarily look like a hospital or something like that. And so I think we also need to really think about like how we think about recovery and like what like being willing to fund things that are shown to work in ways that are different than I think we're just doing now, because I think there's a lot of gaps in the systems and it's failing folks, and like folks are dying.
I think there's a really big range of different things folks can do. I think at one end, if folks have an interest or even the slightest amount of passion or concern, that advocacy with their elected officials can be really helpful, and to connect with their MPP as the province is responsible for the health system, and just let them know that they're concerned and encourage their MPPs to learn more, because really there's a lack of awareness on all levels, and that includes our politicians.
I wish that people knew that it really isn't a choice. This is something that we talk about often, and in groups all the time I hear folks sharing, what is said to them when they disclose their eating disorder, and often it's like, well, just eat, just get over it, you're too sensitive. I can't tell you how many times I've heard those things, and that's not the case. This is a serious situation, and people need help and they need support, and that may go beyond supporting themselves, and that's okay. So I think the general public needs to have more knowledge around eating disorders, more empathy, that it is a significant challenge and something that people can overcome, but that support and empathy are really important along that journey. And so if somebody discloses to you that they have an eating disorder, be non-judgmental, educate yourself, and do what you can to support.